Kia ora. Good morning. Thanks for your time.
Kia ora, Andrew. Thank you for having me.
Now, we're talking it's an interesting topic, online dating and a theology of Tinder. Certainly wasn't the case back in my day, but Jethro, I understand that, this particular topic, you've got a bit of a vested interest. It was part of certainly your journey, your happy ever after. Is that correct?
Yeah, definitely. No, it's Tinder. I mean, it's an interesting space, interesting platform that has varied views on it. However, it's one of those areas that we use quite effectively these days, as well as the challenges that faced in that space. For myself, it is a way that I've been able to connect and engage, especially with those who are very close to me.
Yeah, no, certainly. I mean, some people would think, oh, gosh, isn't it a bit of a meat market? Particularly with Tinder, aren't we making decisions based solely on visual appearance? This is, typical of the online lowest common denominator stuff that actually it's rewarding all the wrong things when it comes to what's important in a relationship. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, and I mean, that can be the perspective that people are looking specifically at the outside appearance, that they are looking at specific words and a description to really outline who the person is, and that the photos are the ones that really attract a viewer's perspective. And in some situations, that can definitely be the case. I mean, there's a lot of online apps that people are using for various ways of connecting with others, and the social dynamics have changed quite significantly. People aren't going out to different places to hang out socially to connect with others as they used to. And so this is very much the social forms of engagement that people are experiencing. So there's the positives and there's the negatives that kind of precede the space as well.
Now, it's probably the case that there is not a single photograph on Tinder which hasn't at least got a filter, if not Photoshop, even if it's an actual photo of the person. But it's also the case that in terms of traditional dating, you're not actually yourself when you're meeting somebody for the first time that you're trying to impress. You're a highly curated version of yourself. You're trying to put your best foot forward. That's not necessarily accurate to who we really are either. That's part of the dating game, whether it be in person or online.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, people always want to put their best foot forward. The challenge with that is that technology can sometimes be a nice barrier to the way in which people present themselves. And there is that saying around catfishing, somebody portraying themselves as not who they really are, and their interests or their photos don't necessarily align with who exactly they are. And so the challenge that it sits in is understanding whether that is a unique and genuine person that you're talking to, that's who they are actually portraying themselves to be. But I mean, you can see that in the other spaces as well, in the physical space with person-to-person dating. Somebody could portray themselves a different way as well. And so there's definitely hurdles in both situations, but there is definitely ways in which we can look at it as an avenue of understanding the culture that we sit in, and specifically the generations that are growing up in that culture.
Certainly this is the way in which people connect now, and there's no point saying, hey, back in the day, because actually that's not the day that we're currently in. Let's look at some of the advantages of that online dating, that online community, that way of establishing relationships in an online sense, which then go on to perhaps in-person relationships.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's the beauty of that online space, is that the purpose of connection is something that will eventually be physical. It will be something where people will see themselves physically. And so that's an important factor to consider, yes.
What do you see to be the advantages of online dating? If you were, I suppose, to be an advocate for it, what would you say are the positive things that it brings to that space?
Definitely. I would, as somebody who thinks there's definitely pros in the situation, but there are a lot of cons. I'd say that the advantages to online dating are the fact that you get to connect with somebody without necessarily going into too much of the physicality. Seeing somebody in person can sometimes be a detriment to your dating experience. And so the online place gives you an opportunity to chat, to connect in different ways. Some people will video conference, some people will connect in over phone calls and things like that. Yes, there are a lot of chats and there are a lot of photos, but really you can set some parameters. You can set some boundaries within your relationships, and you can look at how you engage with people, as well as the expectations are there. They're very clear from the get-go. And so there's the confusion of, say, for instance, dating within a social group. which has kind of been the norm
Yeah.
very much in the past, is, even within those friends groups, sometimes, and I've seen it before with a lot of friends in the past and experienced it myself, when you're dating somebody and that relationship unfortunately doesn't work, and then the friendship breaks and the friend circle starts to change and fracture, it can be really challenging to work out the dynamics of not losing a multiple amount of friendships.
Yeah, your best mate ends up going out with your ex-girlfriend, and then you've got to pick a side. It just gets messy, right? Exactly.
Yes. I'm from quite a small town, and so unfortunately that was the case in many instances, especially in the churches around there, where a lot of people were dating and based on kind of who was in the church. And so some young adults would move churches based on the fact that either a broken relationship had taken place or that there was no one that they were really looking at seriously.
I mean, looking at the spiritual aspect of that, is that, again, an advantage that, of course, in the social media world, we all have a profile of who we are and what our interests are, that actually, in a positive way, with online dating, you can do a little bit of background stalking. What sort of things are they doing on social media? What sort of sense of humor do they have? What type of things are they reposting? This is actually a tool that we can get to know each other in the background before we decide whether or not we've got a match.
Definitely. And I mean, that's helpful in itself. I mean, the label stalking can be a really negative and problematic label to put on it. But, I mean, stalking, even for instance, myself, who I've employed a lot of people over the years and then gone through the recruitment phase, as I will use social media, LinkedIn, and a whole range of different platforms to actually see who the person is and whether they would be a good fit with my company. And so in that essence, thinking about it on a personal perspective as well, it's actually really important to understand a little bit of the background of where people come from. You get a lot of clarity on who they are, their personality, who they interact with, and some of their interests and hobbies. And so that can be really helpful. But openness and honesty in that space is essential. How are you open with saying that actually, hey, I had a look at your profile, rather than this kind of stigma being based around that space as well.
Exactly. Now, in terms of spiritual compatibility, this is a big part of it as well. And hey, just because somebody's going to youth group doesn't necessarily mean that they are a Christian. But is this another, I suppose, way of finding that spiritual compatibility through online dating, through online connection? Again, you get to test the waters a little bit before you're more deeply connected in a physical aspect.
Yeah, and I think there's definitely the importance of portraying yourself and the way in which you're genuinely coming across that space, identifying your Christian beliefs and your faith is a key aspect of that. People want genuine people. They're looking for someone genuine. They're not looking for somebody who portrays themselves in a certain way but actually doesn't live to those standards. And so it can be really a positive platform for people to share their perspectives, their faith, their journey, and that can be really healthy. It can also be a platform where, once again, people do take advantage of it. And so there is that concern of how you balance that and the parameters that you put in place. And so what boundaries do you set within those relationships? What are you looking for? And how does it fit into the online dating world? Yeah. And so there's a spiritual inclination there. And there's also the need to also be very careful in how you approach that, and to not necessarily, in the sense that Scripture talks about guarding your heart, the way in which you should approach situations. It works outside in your dating relationships, and it works in your marriage. It works in a range of different places of how we explore and interpret those Scriptures and then apply them to the way in which we live. But in this particular situation, I'd say that's a very helpful tool to engage with. I
mean, the algorithms are wanting to take us so far. Yes, they can filter out some of the people that we're not compatible with, but it is something which we do carefully and prayerfully as we seek to make good relationships. But hey, maybe online dating is one of those tools. Appreciate your wisdom and insights, Jethro. Thank you very much for being part of the program today.
Yeah, thank you, Andrew. Appreciate it.